upheaval, so you can stay ahead of the changes in our world and keep your family safe.
Well, it sounds like that dropped off there at the very last second. Don't know what happened, but welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. We're trying to bring David Stig Hansen in with us, and looks like my head's cut off there in the middle. That's all good. But let's see. We're going to talk about Richat Structure tonight. So we have David Stig Hansen with us. He is on his fourth trip out to the Richat Structure, but this time he's looking at some geological formations and some possible ancient, let's say, worship sites, something carved out of stone that's 108 miles to the northeast of the Richat Structure, out on what is the old seashore of, if you believe the tales and myths of ancient times, that there were seas to the south and to the north of the Richat Structure. So the northern sea boundary edge there is where the ports would have been. And that's where he's heading out to. He's going to check some old coastlines off of that. I'm trying to bring him in, but I can't get the thing to add in another participant after I started the call here. I can't seem to get him in. Please, technical difficulty here. I'm trying to add somebody else in. So please, let's see, participants. I'm trying to add somebody else in on the call. Ransom, I see your mic is right there. Yeah, maybe you can add David Stig Hansen with us. I don't know if you have his add to the group. Yeah, David Stig Hansen. And that's his day. David Stig Hansen, Hansen. And it goes by the name of Stig. Stig, I gotta find you and add you in. He's over in Spain right now. He's in Cadiz. And check this out. He's going to be taking the ferry over to Tangiers. And then from there, he was going down to Marrakesh, and from Marrakesh over to Casablanca, and then getting on the train and heading south. And then from Casablanca, once he arrives there, he's going to hop a short air flight over to Ouadane, over in Mauritania, and then start the ground journey again over to the Richat Structure. Stig, we're trying to add you in. I'm trying to figure out how to get this
is that him
call on here and add some more people into the chat, but I'm just not seeing it. I just don't know how to add another participant in.
Does it say?
Because when I started the call here with you, Ransom, can you take over while I try to figure out this tech difficulty here? Yeah. Anyway, welcome everybody. We're trying to get something new. Host, guest next week. Who's coming on with it? We're trying to get a few more different persons on, and the guest list is growing here. Hold on, I need to find. Jeffrey Nyquist is coming on next week with us, and a lot of you know him as geopolitical analyst. Super deep into a lot of Middle East, and we're trying to figure out what is moving on here. All right. Anyway, Ransom, please take it away while I try to figure out how to get another participant in on the call here.
I was just tripping out. Can you hear me? I don't
hear you at all anyway.
No? What?
Let me see if Stig's coming in.
I see my voice.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can get him.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Loud and clear. 5x5.
Yeah, I found one, but it said it was in Taipei, Taiwan. David Stig Hansen. If that's him, I can add him from here. Hello? I'm all alone? I guess he didn't hear that. All right. Anyway, what is this structure out in the middle of Africa up there? I think it's a giant old volcano geologic feature there. But I do know that Cro-Magnon man was all over this area, and there's some really trippy history of different indigenous people that you wouldn't think would live in Africa, because they're blondies with blue eyes and stuff. But
hey, they found the same thing with red hair out in China too. So it's not exclusively just from one part of the world. There are anomalies of races and tall giants, etc., all around the world.
Well, they still live there today. They're called the Berber, and they were blonde and blue-eyed with a about 40% ratio of Rh negative blood until the Islamic invasion kind of converted the Moors, who actually were redheaded people too, converted them to Islam, and their demographics changed over time. But the people still exist there in North Africa. And they believe that they're direct descendants from Cro-Magnon man. But I think everybody is.
Hey, we'll see. The 23andMe, I saw a judge was going to be ordering the sale of 23andMe, all that DNA of 15 million people in the United States. 15 million had sent their DNA in for, to check out their lineage and whatnot. And we talked about this a few times, but I cannot believe all of that DNA is for sale. All of it.
Right.
To a single buyer. Like, whoever would have thought? Now anybody with the right amount of money can just get they can get whatever you want. They can get your DNA. Now, how is that? Like, a foreign power now has access to your DNA.
Yeah, well, I imagine that they were already trading and in information despite saying that they had privacy, because you remember back in the day, for an example, we had Verizon, AT&T, and all of these public communication companies that supposedly were keeping your information private, but it turns out they had a floor at most of their headquarters dedicated just so the NSA could tap in and check out what everybody's doing. It's so bizarre to me, since the revelations of Edward Snowden. Nobody cares. They just accept it. Yeah, they're spying on me. Oh well. There's no internet privacy. There never was. So if you've uploaded your DNA to the internet, undoubtedly, they've shared that to third parties. And then with companies like 23andMe, they're going to do it out in the open, just along with a business sale. It says David has joined.
Yeah,
David has joined. Okay. Stig, please turn on your camera so we can see you. He's like floating around over in Cadiz somewhere right now.
That was the guy.
Best. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. There I am. Thank you. I think that works, right?
Yeah, we can see your
sort
little picture.
Well, we don't see any image yet, but I know we're going long distance on this. So, Ransoms, that you're running the cameras here and pulling in the feed, I'm not going to talk because I think there might be some sort of delay here. So, Stig, when you get your camera on, there you go. You look like you've been having the tapas earlier with the red wine, dude. I love it.
I am drinking this.
Pounding down the Rioja. Yeah, right.
Here, let me put it on.
Wine. Oh, this is full with water. Hold on. I'm really drinking water.
Yeah, it is water. Sure. Okay, it is.
But now it's wine. So some Crianza, very popular Spanish grape.
But it is only 3 a.m. there, so I mean, hey.
Only 3 a.m.
Thanks for joining us, Stig.
I can't talk too loud, so I'm going to try to keep it low. Everybody needs to turn their volume up. Ransom's got me in mirror mode. That's not... Hey, Ransom, it's nice to finally talk to you. I don't think we've actually talked before. I think we lost
I'm
Ransom.
Muted. No, I just muted because they canceled Skype, basically, so they deleted all the features on the app, so I'm having to use the browser version. And
is it already canceled?
Well, they canceled the features, like on the app, like you can't call anybody or video call. And I think they only got like 3 days left till they make everybody convert to the Teams. But I got it. I got the feed through the browser, so we see you and we can hear you loud and clear.
I'm seeing me on you. Just want to let you know that I did get my satellite phone registered, so I can make a call right now. But there's too many buildings here. I'm right next to this big cathedral.
Okay.
And it's impossible to get you got to go out in the middle of nowhere for these iridiums. But I got this going, so I'll give you guys a call when I'm in the middle of the Richat Structure.
Sweet. So what you see on my camera is the feed to the live stream. So that's just you there, and they see you.
Now, Ransom, are you able to put in some slides as we go through and talk for a minute here? Because I, had given you
Absolutely.
access to that slide deck there.
Yeah,
There we
but
go.
you said something about giving him the full like 340 slides.
No, it was
Okay.
the most recent one there with like
That's not
whittled
my
down
slide.
with just a few of the
No,
Eye of
that's a
Africa type of
article there.
things.
But
Here's
you
your
love that
stuff right
picture,
here.
and there's so
Yeah,
much
there
to
you
see
go.
there. Hey, show the first one. Go back up. That's the link to my webpage, which is my name.com. And guess what? I'm doing a GoFundMe. I got like $800 already from my fans. That's my artwork. Um, doing a
Go
lot
back to
of
that bit. If I could
artwork.
jump back in, because that's the main thing that you're trying to get out to is this geological
The main
feature
thing.
that could have been a sacred ceremonial spot along with some mining operation there
Look at
because
it.
that doesn't
Look at
look
it.
natural. And it's
What
right up on the
created
coast that
that?
used to be the previous shoreline of that area. So point us to this one here when you talk about what you got going on.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Please, that's where I'm headed. If the GoFundMe is focused on this trip specifically, and like I said, I raised a bunch of money, but I'm already on my way, and it's not too late to help me out. I'm looking for a few sponsors to help it make it kind of worth my while because I've been here 3 times already, not there, but at the Eye of Africa, and it's I'm monetized, but I don't do the promotions like you do, Dave, and yeah, and it's I should, but it's more of a passion than money making for me. But I could use the cash right now, so it would help. And the Richat Structure has been, and look at the third slide. The third slide is how long I've been looking at this thing. I discovered it in like 2008 and then started talking about it back then. But you know who Jimmy Corsetti is, and he brought up the fact that it could be Atlantis, and then I started to follow it even closer. Look at that picture. That's the new LiDAR scan. You can see a lot of different stuff right there. The other circle is called the Semsiat Dome, but I call it a feature because I don't believe it's any type of volcanic structure. Right next to it, you can see roads and stuff that were never seen before. So I'm going to go look at closer at that one road that's so prominent right there. It's like a road or a dam. It meets two rivers. It meets two canal segments, and it's pretty obvious that circle was part of some type of water management system, in my opinion. And there's a lot of things I can say about it, but honestly, I wanted to let you guys be in charge of the slides because normally I do. Yeah, check out my YouTube channel as well because I've got everything there. I put everything I found, and there's so much that has been found. There's canals and ridges and quarries, so many things I can show you. And I want to go to that one that is in the GoFundMe because it's a 6 mile long uh, parallel cuts. Yeah, that's part of it. But if later on in the slideshow, I'll show you the actual quarry itself. That's one part, and I figured out how to get there. And I can't see everything because you'd spend days, and I have to be honest, it gets pretty tough out there in the middle of the desert. I'm
Yeah, so
curious,
Ransom,
Ransom.
if Ransom, now I know, like, just think of it as a person who's first seen this information, that's the whole thing is first time you're seeing this. He'd sent me the slide deck before and I'd done a couple videos with him and, so I'm a little more familiar. So I'm looking at it like I have already seen this, but, Ransom, for you,
Yeah.
like, what are your first questions or, things that you might say? I mean, you look at that image, does it look man-made or does it not? Further down in the slides there, it shows that at much more close-up resolution with the alluvial plains and the different mineral layerings that are close to that. So does that look like a man-made feature to you, or what do you feel about that feature itself? If you scroll down a few more slides, I don't know, slide 55, I think was the one that I remember being somewhere around 55 or something, is the actual close-up on that one.
Those right
I
there are
had
the
it right.
quarries. That's the quarry right there. That's the parallel cuts that are 6 miles long. And you say, oh, that's just natural. But I've been looking at that for a long time, and I realized it can't be. And then you get closer, take a look at some of the other ones. The one before it, look at the one before it. Go back up let's see how far back up it goes, those few. One more. Nope. Well, look at that machine. Now, we have machines like this. Isn't it possible that those types of machines could cut lines like this? Now you can go through those slowly and see the way there's 6 miles long. From this side all the way 6 miles, and then across it's about 3.5. So when you please continue, yeah, at your leisure. I used to think that that was kind of a natural fractaling of the land, but then when I realized the rest of the world, when I saw South Africa, when I saw what they're doing in Colorado, I realized it's not natural. If you keep going, you can see the grit. Of course, you see natural stuff there. A lot of it's erosion.
And how much
It,
of it was plasma arcing? Because some of these things, yeah, like that for me is a bit strange on the contouring. I'm interested in myself to see what might be out there because,
yeah,
but
I
Ransom,
can't
you're
wait
in
to
an
get
area
out
there
there.
in the desert like that. And the same thing with the Kalahari canals in southern Africa and around that empty off into the Okavango Delta. That same parallel structuring is down there. But Ransom, you're out in the desert area. Do you see something like this over in our desert Southwest here?
Yeah, but it depends on what layers there's. You could see, like from this photo, this is a totally different layer
That's
than
the
where you're
top,
seeing the rocks. That's another
Mm-hmm.
right?
layer. And
Right.
then this is the bottom layer down here where all of this stuff erodes to. Um,
The
you
bottom
see
layer
that,
was a lake.
yeah. Though, well, obviously, you see this whole thing is a water drainage area. I mean,
Sure.
but on top of that, whenever you have these layers that are exposed like that, I see this kind of in real time out here in the desert where you will get a flood that will make everything mud, and then slowly it cracks into these weird geometric shapes. And it depends on, the flow of stuff. But if you're talking volcanic stuff, um, depending on what material it is, it has lines and stuff in it, and they will crack. Like whenever the bottom underneath it starts to erode, it has uneven pressure and it starts to crack. Now, I'm not a geologist. I mean, I'm just saying I've seen stuff like this, and you can produce weird stuff naturally like this. And maybe the part you guys might be
Of
missing
course.
is that when you come across, or at least, Neolithic people, which is the time there was probably a lot of people through here, um, they would have found natural formations and started using them to their benefit. So, like, that, where was that? It's back here
Well, as
somewhere.
you
Further
may
down
know,
in the
the
slide, if you
random
go down a little
tunnels.
further,
Well, well, I was looking
that
for the
ceremonial like carved rock structure.
that
Go
one
back
that
into
he
It's
had
very
up at the
similar to what
top.
is seen
Here, hold
between
on.
the channel between China and Taiwan at about 250 feet in depth, and also off of
Like
India and the
this.
East Coast, not Dwarka on the West Coast, but in the East Coast,
It's an
off
ancient dam and an
Puri,
ancient
and
road.
that there's the very same similar shaped objects or the similar shaped, they have that sort of oval shape to them with multiple cuts in it. They've done a bunch of side scans and thing.
Well,
It's
you
very
you know that
similar, but this one's above water. So there's two matching underwater across the planet, and this is one that's very similar in shape, construction, carved,
this
but
looks
it's
like the
above water. So,
the
measuring this out and taking a look at some of these, like you got that parallel crisscross, but having it two other places on the planet, because there was no water in the channel between Taiwan and China some, 13 to 15, 18,000 years ago. During the Ice Age, it was dry. Some temple was built there, some structure, some worship center was there. And then we, again in India off the coast of Puri, it's not very deep out there. It's like 80 feet deep. That would have been super dry, way out. And now we found something similar here. So, can you match those three up
Can you
with the
go down
size,
to
the
about
shape,
slide
and the
8, I believe? Like
yeah.
slide 8 shows something that Graham Langdon from the Archaic Lens channel. I got to see it first, and I'm not able to scroll down a little bit. And
Six
yeah,
and eight.
not me, not me. Go down past me. That's me
Yeah.
at the castle. Yeah, that's castle right there. You can click on the castle if you want, and that's where I went. That was my first trip. And that was because of Corsetti, right? He pointed
Right.
that out to everybody. Now I've been there, and the next slide kind of shows what that stuff is. It's just rocks. That's from the 1800s. That's from the French Foreign Legion. But down below that, there's some payload. Not that. Keep going a little bit. I can't see it because,
Well, I wanted
yeah,
to
that's
stop
it.
here for a minute because
That's
this
it.
yeah,
is
Okay, the
this is
next one
the
is what
this
I'm
is the money
talking
shot
about.
here. This is what he's going to see. This particular formation.
this
Yeah, I want to
looks
get a little
a
closer
lot
look
like
at that.
Bimini Road, right? Have you seen the
Well,
Bimini
Bimini
Road?
Road. Shoot, I didn't even put that
that is
together. Bimini
true.
Road kind.
But you've got the parallel lines that go straight across. Then you've got the relief cut lines that go 45-degree angle. Well, maybe not 45, but at an angle. And I do believe that was a mining technique. Now, here's the thing. The next slide shows something that Graham Langdon found. Graham Langdon runs this Archaic Lens channel, and he went there 2 times so far. This will be my 4th trip, but he went over to a place and found these. These are hand axe heads. They're Paleolithic mining axe heads. What are they for? A lot of stuff. But do you think that hunter-gatherers could have done what you just looked at with these tools? I personally don't.
No.
I think there were a series of projects that happened there, and some of those parallel lines were a little rougher, and it looked like people have been working them like not the big machines anymore. But I think over time the projects become more and more less advanced. As you see, that big, huge field was 6 miles long, and you've got parallel lines cut through. You see that later at the highest point of the Adrar Plateau. So it's all over the world, actually. I've seen it everywhere. And I can't unsee South Africa.
Right. Well,
Stig, if you're able to pick up a few of those axe heads right there and bring them back, that'd be nice.
Yeah, technically, it goes against ethics as far as archaeology goes. Would I sneak one if I could? Maybe, but there's only 10,000 laying there. Who put those there? And how did they get there? Did they have to do with the mining, or was that some other project? Those are already pretty much acknowledged as being man-made carved hand axe heads. There's like 10,000 laying there. I think they were put there by somebody trying to deflect and say, oh, it's ancient people. Sorry, it's hunter-gatherers. But in my opinion, there's bigger proof that there was advanced civilization, there advanced mining, water management for sure, everywhere around the world. But here in the Richat especially, you've got the North Shore, that's 200 miles long. There was a sea in the north. And then down below, you've got these water walls that could have encompassed the sea in the south. And I go over it a lot in my channel.
Well, I was going to say one thing about this is something you find a lot in the Clovis people.
Clovis, Clovis,
They
Clovis
would have a
repositories, right?
manufacturing center where they would do things that people don't really get today. They're massive manufacturing. In other words, it's like they would, get 100 elephants, whatever you call them, not mastodon, the mammoths, and make them run over the cliff, and they would cut them all up. And when you really think about what it would take to do that, we're talking, tons of meat. They would have had a lot of people in a whole manufacturing center to carve, cut up, and preserve the meat, and then distribute it. And this looks like one of a manufacturing center for points. And if you look at them, they're all failed attempts at big points. They're ugly. They're misshapen. They would just toss these down and then start a new one. And when you find this in North America with Clovis points, you'll find a whole little field of failed points. And then near that, you'll find a bunch of chips where they started trying to make a shape, and then they just give up because they have tons of material. There's no reason to keep chipping it down. You just start on a new one. And they just pile these on there. They'll come back and get these later and then start reworking them again. It's like a cash. It's money.
Okay, so Archaic Lens said that some of those were created in situ. And I kind of wonder if they were laying around so long they cracked naturally from weathering.
I would doubt that. There's too many of them. I can see at least 15 right here that are point shapes, like a Clovis point or a Solutrean point.
Those are just north.
It's more primitive than that, though.
How heavy do you think each of those points are there? I mean, if we're talking about a human like us, when we're going to be putting that on the end of a spear, I mean, what do you think the weight on that? 5 to 6 pounds for one of those points there? Those look larger than just arrowheads for sure. They're substantially larger.
Well, they look. Yeah, true. I can't tell how big they are, but I was thinking they were about 3 to 5 inches each.
That's what it looks like to me. More than 3.
And it would be 5. Like, half a pound each.
Stig, did you say some people were selling those on the side of the road, that you'd notice some people selling this kind of stuff on the side of the road that were villagers there?
I got some arrowheads. I actually gave one to Jimmy when I met him in CPAC in 2024. You know who Jimmy is, Ransom? And
yeah.
I gave it to him when he's going on stage, and he said, I'm kind of busy. I'm like, well, I just want to give this to you. He's like, oh, I'm not too busy for that. But the problem is that these were all like green, and I didn't see any green arrowheads like right there. That desert doesn't have green stone, so I'm afraid that they're probably created by the locals and sold.
Yeah,
But
it's very
I got a couple of
possible.
those.
Yeah,
Not
right.
the
Yeah,
big
everybody's looking for treasures. Hey, we got this.
Randall Carlson said that people were mining or quarrying chert outcrops. I say people. He's exact words by somebody. He doesn't say people. And 1.5 million years ago, right there, we've got the chert outcrops and the mega breccia outcrops that have been mined. There's a few pictures ahead, or I don't know where you are in the slideshow, but I'm here to let you ask questions. Come to we're going to do it like a tour in November. If there's English speaking clients, then I'll be there. And you can see that on my website as well. The Atlas Mountains, Plato said the mountains to the north. He was talking about the Atlas Mountains. And I believe that now in my heart, because recently I've discovered that the word Atlas and the word Atlantis are pretty much the same word.
Yeah.
I can demonstrate that. Also, this one researcher, he used all the elements in Plato's words, and he pointed right south of the Atlas Mountains. Um, Michael Hubner, he passed away, but he did a research paper, and it points right there south of the high Atlas between the anti-Atlas. It's called the Sumasa um, Sumasa Plateau or something. I forgot. And it points right there, and that's it. All the things in the actual writings, if you take them and mask them over each other, it points right there. All the different, like near mountains and different stuff like that.
Well,
I
it's
don't want
weird. I could tell you some stuff that would support the theory, but then also, stuff that doesn't support it. Like, I mentioned the Berber before, and
Sure.
they believe that they came from Atlantis. So that's like not only them, but the Basque, and then off the coast here you have the Ganchi, that died out from smallpox with the Spanish invasion there on the Canary Islands. They were a 6 to 7 foot tall red-headed people that were direct descendants from Cro-Magnon, and they didn't have any admixture from the mainland. So, when you start talking about this, there seems to have been a very early pre-flood migration into Europe, Asia, and North Africa from somewhere, which, we all know that the ocean is now 400 feet up. So any homeland or, bigger area out there in the Atlantic would be gone, except for like the Canary Island, the Azores, stuff like that. But they did talk about, on the other hand, that Atlantis would be past the gates of Gibraltar. So that would be out there. And keep in mind that some of those islands probably at one time connected to North Africa. So that would link all of these people into a pre-Diluvian civilization that would have been, stretched from West Africa all the way over to the Mediterranean and into Israel and like Baalbek and places like that in Lebanon. And then you also have the Aztec and their legends of coming from Atlan, which is very close to Atlas
It
and
certainly
Atlantis
is.
and all of this. So I don't think there's really a argument that there wasn't at one time a civilization that lived all through this whole area. I don't specifically think the Richat is Atlantis, because we know it's geologic. I mean, there's rings in it that are magma. Other rings are limestone, and it erodes at a different rate. So they can give a real, this was around hundreds of millions of years before
Okay,
humans.
let me respond to that real quick, because Plato wrote that it was naturally made. There's no argument there. It was part natural. But let me say one thing else that he said. Everybody says beyond the Pillars of Hercules. But what they don't say is the next thing Plato says, which is the King Atlas. By the way, the King Atlas of Mauritania also is almost mythological, but everybody accepts him as their first king. But Plato wrote that the twin of Atlas received the lot of land across from Cadiz. Now that's just beyond the Pillars of Hercules, but everybody says nobody mentions that. So if you look at what Plato wrote, the allotment of land closer to the Pillars of Hercules and across from Cadiz was given to the twin of an Atlas named
There are a
Gadieres,
few.
which is Cadiz. It's the same word. So I think that Spain was also Atlantis too. Also, don't forget the Tamanrasset Paleo River separated the lot of land that, okay, so I do believe it was Atlantis, but even if it wasn't, I can show you a lot of things that I found. For example, a 50-mile long canal that points right at the mouth of the Richat. It goes right through the Atlas Mountains, 2,000 feet above sea level, and it points right at the mouth. Now, I wouldn't say you could say that's natural if you take a look at it. And the Russians that I have met recently did find an artifact inside the middle of it. I don't think there's many of those slides in there, Dave. I think you took those ones out of there. The Russians, they found that artifact 10 meters long or 10 feet long. They tested it. They found iron enrichment and also manganese. Isn't that? And by the way, I'm not a metallurgist. Isn't manganese what's used to turn iron into steel?
Quick, Google, help us. No, I don't
So
know either.
wait
Man.
until you see the artifact. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't belong there. And it's certainly in the middle of a canal that's 50 feet high and 100 feet wide. It's something that I definitely don't think is natural. Now, as far as the ruiniforms, like you mentioned, where are you, by the way, Ransom?
I'm right here. I just
Okay,
got,
so
I,
you said
I
the
was
desert.
showing you.
You mentioned the desert. I know I see you in the video, but in the desert somewhere, are you in Utah? What state are you in?
No, I'm in the borderland down in the bottom of New Mexico.
Okay. Have you heard of Shiprock in New Mexico?
Yes, I've been there.
I'm sorry,
It's
I
in the
didn't mean
Four
to say
Corners.
Shiprock. I've been there, but I meant to say Pie Town, New Mexico. Take a look at Pie Town and tell me what created those 12-mile long parallel ridges. They're not in this, they may be later in the presentation, and we can talk about that again, but I did discover that using actually just Google Earth, but you can barely see it. Later, I went there, 12-mile long parallel ridges. This is the type of thing that I really think is highly sus. And I
You
don't
said
think you can say those are volcanic dikes anymore. Just
you,
like those at Shiprock. I don't believe, I know I do take a step out of science or mainstream, but it's just, to me, the volcanic dikes in Colorado, they don't make sense. Take a look at my crisscross dikes I found near Spanish Peaks. We can talk very closely about how two volcanic dikes junction one another and one actually curves up to meet the top of the other one. I don't think that's the way volcanic dikes are supposed to work. I know how they say they're supposed to work, but they don't add up. And there's these same things in South Africa. It makes me realize something really big, ancient megalithic terraforming has going on. Take a look at the South Africa pictures that are in that presentation and tell me what natural geological thing can do this. And David, you removed one where they point to that isosceles triangle. But
Well, that one that
check
I found down there that you'd pointed me to, it points directly north to Adam's calendar. I mean, if you were going to
sure.
ping that one straight north, it goes to Adam's calendar off of those structures. So, Ransom, it's like further down where it says, once you see, you can't unsee. Further down, it's way further down in like the hundreds of slide down
We're
there, further
looking at
down.
canals. We're
There's
looking
four of
at
these, what look like temple complexes, not the quarries. Keep going down
click on
further
that.
more
That's
on
the
that
50-mile long one.
until you see
That
the
one
South
is
Africa section. Keep going past that. You get roll down a little more, and then right about there. Yeah,
Ransom,
no, keep
even if
going
it wasn't
south. Keep,
Atlantis, you can't,
yeah, you'll see
even
it.
if
It
it,
says once you see, you can't unsee. I do believe.
I
Maybe
think
you
we
need to go
passed
back
it.
north
Go
again.
back
Go
up.
back up higher in the
What
slides,
happened to
like
that
around
Cannon
80s or
slide?
something. You'll find it. Look for that slide that just says once you see, you can't see South Africa. Keep going up and yeah, keep going further north, a little bit
there's
further
South
north.
That's
Africa
all.
right here.
Well, yeah, that's the
That's
Kalahari Canals.
Kalahari Canals type of stuff.
It's
But keep
above
going
that.
a little bit higher up, once a little bit more up,
There you go. There you go.
right there. Yeah,
Right
just the next
there.
one right there, and then go down one slide.
Okay, that one is
Okay.
my mound. I discovered that. That's
Now that one
Stig's mound.
points, yeah, that one points to Adam's calendar directly north. If you were to shoot a line about 200 miles north, was it about 200 miles north? Because I'd run a line from that one up and found Adam's calendar up there.
I wouldn't say it's exactly in line with the pyramids and with Adam's calendar, but it's pretty much in the same. It's a little bit to the west, I believe. But look, if
Yeah.
you looked at that in Google Earth, you would see how pyramidal that is. There's
Yeah, definitely.
terracing. Yeah, if you look at it,
Now
if
there's
you
four
use
more of
the
those that are the same though. That's the interesting thing. They all have the same look to them. Now this is This is far.
It's
This would be that
5.
400,000-year-old stuff that Tellinger talks about down there, and Michael Tellinger talks about in Zimbabwean thing. Like those next few slides are absolutely mind blowing if you look at them.
Okay.
But Michael
You can't
Tellinger
tell me
won't
there's
talk
4 of
about
those
this.
that look exactly the same, that they weren't man
Look at
created.
the next one. Look at the next one.
I can tell you that.
The next one shows the 4. Yeah, that's all 4 of them, and this is a 5th one. So there's 5.
Right.
And the next one shows 2 intersections that are very close to one another, and the plateaus surrounding them. Both of those are 100. Is it feet? I can't remember. Is it feet or meters wide? Feet.
It
And
says 100
those,
meters. I don't know if
first
that has
you've
anything
got
to do.
90-degree.
Meter, 3 feet for 1 foot. If you're going to convert meters, it's 3 feet to a.
What does that
It's
say?
3
It
feet
says
to a
feet.
1 meter.
It's feet, right? That says
It
100
says
feet.
meters.
100
100
meters.
100 meters.
Okay, so that's the distance between the shortcut and the 90-degree intersection. Ancient truckers, and look up, you've got a notch where they actually separate. What cut into that bedrock right there? Both of them are almost exactly the same. They're very close to each other. And the one's in South Africa, one's in Lesotho. And those plateaus, those are 40. I know that looks like a road, but those little dots are houses. Something made those. It's not like a natural thing right there. And it's not just that. There's so much more. And I think that the ridges started for me there. Those aren't ridges. Those are like gutters or gaps. And I think of the, what do you call it, the cart ruts? Well, these are much bigger than any of those cart ruts, but nobody talks about it. Michael Tellinger doesn't talk about this. And if you look at the whole thing on the right, the structure on the right, that's actually part of a bigger complex called Kolonyama. And maybe the next slide has it. I can't remember the layout on that. I should have put it there. See, you can see how they terraformed the actual ground down there. That's in South Africa north. That's in line with Adam's calendar. Adam's calendar is just north of that.
Sweet.
And just keep going, Ransom, because
Ransom, hold on. If I could stop for a second. Now, Ransom, you said those
That's
things
not the
could be
same one.
proved that they were not man-made, because I said, yeah, so look at that one. And I
Well,
was saying it looks man-made. At least it seems that something's off, but the center part with the terracing
don't
on
forget,
it looks
on that
more
one, don't
sculpted, and you were
forget.
saying, no way, that's not man-made.
Don't forget, there's a line right in front of it that goes on for miles and miles, and it intersects with other lines. So these transport routes, or if they're roads or canals, I don't know, but they're these straight lines that go on for miles and miles. So they're all connected. So it's not just that, it's the line in front of it. It's obvious that it's not some kind of natural geological feature because it connects all these. Now I could screen share Google Earth and show you how that connects to a channel that is also, in my opinion, highly sus. And yes, those little white dots are houses.
right.
So these things are giant. This mound is in Lesotho, I believe. Yes, and it's kind of at an angle with this channel. There's like 3 different channels that go up into the mountains. I think we delete those slides. South Africa slides here are like 8, but you can go to my channel and see hours and hours of talk about South Africa. I've
Well,
forgotten more.
Let's talk about this slide right here.
Mm-hmm.
See, well, I'm going to be devil's advocate here.
Of course.
So I'm a big pre-Diluvian worldwide civilization believer. However, you were just mentioning how gigantic this is, so that's one input that tells you probably it's not man-made. But the thing is you see each one of these steps. You find this in the desert here. The top layer eroded the most in geologic time, and then the second layer less time and less time until you get down to the bottom layer. So each one of these layers, you could go to one of those other mounds that you have on here, like here. And if they're at the same part, you can match the layers of
Okay, do me a
geologic
favor.
time.
Quickly look at that one on the bottom left. What made that line across the top of it? Because that line goes on for miles.
Well, there's giant
like 10
cracks in
miles.
the earth. I mean, all over the place.
You say
And-
giant cracks, but when you say volcanic dikes, you have 5 steps. First, the bedrock cracks, then the magma fills it, then the magma crystallizes, and then the surrounding bedrock erodes away and leaves the volcanic ridge. But how would it do that simultaneously with that big weird thing? I understand your point, though.
It might not be simultaneous. We're talking millions and millions, even hundreds of millions
I do understand.
of years.
I believe
So,
it feels.
There's lots of events that can happen over time and add to the shape of things, and it not necessarily be all happening at once.
Well, there's a one. It's in the slideshow. There's a couple of ridges that go across these amphitheater. It's pretty obvious that it's deliberate. Scroll through all the South Africa. We've seen that.
Okay.
Those two ridges, I know that that one's one next to another one. Take a look at the next one. They're not the same place. Okay, so those are two. They're down kind of below Johannesburg. And there's a third one right there. Those two. I mean, yeah, I do believe something like this could happen naturally, but not as consistent as you see miles and miles of these lines, and they're obviously deliberate. Take a look at my videos on them, and then let's talk about it, because I think that you might see. Now, that one, you can see some ancient slurry caught up in it. You got these parallel lines, and then a side, almost perpendicular line. And there's triangles in there, too. A couple of them are perfect triangles. I don't think triangles are supposed to happen in nature like that, but you've got a whole cluster down there. Just like arches. Why are all the arches in one place? Because I believe that that was a hobby of the giants that created what went on in Canyonland. This is one of 3 channels that goes up into the Lesotho Mountains. And if you notice, they crisscross up into it. I don't see how a natural reaction, a natural, we're talking about volcanic dikes still, I think. We're not talking about just cracks. We're talking about ridges. You take a close look, you've got a crystallized wall inside these ridges, just like in Colorado or Shiprock and Pytown. And okay, now look, we talked about Tassil Najer. That's in Algeria. Dave, the next slide, you and I, we dissected that with the measurements. That's kind of a slide that I grabbed from somebody else, but the next one is Google Earth. And when you look at this and the straight cuts and lines, you say, oh, are they similar like Canyonlands, Utah, or ruiniforms like the ones I want to visit in the Eye of Africa? You start to see straight lines. There's a serpentine. Go to the next one. I think it's a serpentine. That's actually, okay, that's different. Okay, so Dave, you removed the serpentine, I think. It's this long, like 30 miles long serpentine going across that thing. I do believe that's an ancient quarry field in Tassil Najer, 200 miles long. There's so many things that I wish I could show you right now. And then we're looking now at the Kalahari
Those are the
Canal.
Kalahari canals. That's bit up there.
quarter
If you're like
million
one slide
square
up.
miles. A 250,000 square miles. And you're going to say that's natural. I know. But if you take a close look, they're all very equal apart. That's from the internet, but I thought it was a pretty good dissection of them. It's a 250,000 square miles in that previous slide. Or the next, wait, where are we? The previous
Right.
slide, the one of
You're
showing
down
the
at the
ocean.
Kalahari canals. Well, what's one interesting feature on that is it all drains in the Okavango Delta. So if you're talking about waterworks projects, this is one
Waterman,
thing even many years ago that couldn't be explained, is how all the parallel channeling goes into a natural water basin anyway. It's not like trying to redivert it, it's trying to work with it. So if you're talking about changes over 6,000 years of precipitation pattern,
okay,
you
so
know,
Plato mentioned
it-
this. Plato told us that there were canals like this around Atlantis. And don't forget, he also made reference to the islands in the, quote, open sea. Furthermore, he said that it was bigger than Libya and Asia combined. To me and to even other people, that's by definition a continent. Okay, so the word island isn't really in play here. This is all the same place. And so Plato probably heard about this, or I don't know, from Solon, right? And didn't realize it was so far south. But these are like the canals that he was describing. So, but that's only, what is Plato, like a
well, can I interject for just a second here? You know, some people have done some reconstructions on that. The water canals between spacing, whatever it is, was pretty consistent. But if they were mound up like our modern agriculture, where you mound something up and grow it in that mound, and then the irrigation is below it, they said with that amount of food growing area, you could feed up to 1 billion people. So if you think about that in the modern day and you bring it up, and they're talking about North Africa and the Sahel to come up as a single grow zone on our planet to feed 1 billion people, using that same concept, you grow it in one place, and you distribute it to the rest of the planet from one grow zone. That's why they're so highly keen on knocking out the legs of agriculture across most areas of the planet.
Look at the
Because
previous
it's going
slide.
to refocus into North Africa and the Sahel. Now think about that for a second. They're just copying the old. They're not creating anything new. If that Kalahari canals truly were, and I'm just saying if they were, the ability, and there was the workforce, and this is one of the oldest places on the planet, known habitation among, if you believe the timelines of out of Africa, etc. But even with the mining stories of 400,000 years ago with other visitors, if they were able to grow enough food for 1 billion people, then all we're doing is recirculating history and coming back in a circle again. So I look at this and say, why is Africa so integral for so long across all cultures and everything from the beginning and medium parts of our history? And now it's meeting back with modern history again for us to restart the global economy, debt system, and then also set up a new growth zone, which will be tightly controlled by a few corporations to distribute to the rest of the planet, the food source, which is scary in itself that they're even thinking that direction.
I don't believe in jointing. Sorry, that mainstream explanation, that geological feature of jointing, I just don't believe it. I think they made it up, and I can't unsee the fields I found in the Grand Canyon. Along the Colorado River, you see a lot of projects, and yeah, you can say, oh, that's natural, that's natural, that's natural, but some of them are so inconsistent. It's like, well, take a look at what I found in Chad. Can you open up Google Earth and go to the middle of the Sahara Desert? I'll show you how to get there. Take a look at Chad and tell me what that is and why that suddenly appeared naturally. I can show it's not natural because there's some grids that prove it's some type of an agricultural project. Google Earth, if you look at the whole
Stig,
Sahara.
can I stop you for a second? I want to thank everybody out here for throwing us some
Click
double
click on the
espressos
Earth.
tonight
Click
on
on
Buy
the
Me a
Earth.
Coffee here. James Ewing, Prost, obviously from Czech Republic. To all three of you, and thanks for the recent share of Ransom asking Jordan Maxwell. Right on with more great intel. Porch Monkey coming on. You boys are FN awesome. Thursday night staple. Got to add some potatoes with that, a little salt and pepper with the staples, maybe some toast, some Italian bread with some butter on that. And someone, again, bought us some double espresso. Thank you, BB. And Ben Davidson, so we don't know if this is Ben Davidson for suspicious observers. Keep hanging in there. We are. Thank you so much. And we're trying to bring you some new info because I'm interested in more of this ancient history. If something could be found on an ancient worship site out there, would have been quarried similar to what's found underwater, it'd be an interesting find. But I just had to stop and thank everybody for supporting us, buying the double espressos to be able to bring us out and continue so we can do some of our running costs here as well. And think about Stig with the GoFundMe so we can get down and continue to jump around in Africa there into the desert, taking us out on the ancient shoreline, no less, off the Richat Structure. Anyway.
Back out. Oh, yeah.
I lost my point there. But anyway, hey, thank you for everybody supporting the broadcast tonight.
All right, Dave.
Appreciate it. And we're just going to keep rolling. So, Stig, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, man.
No, you have to do your thing, and I should have shut my mouth, but I can't help looking at. Put that thing in the center of the screen, that big dark area with the eyeball and the nose. No, that's the circle. Yeah, that's the new circle. But I was talking about up above it. Oh. Back out and yeah. Now, do you see the nose and the eye and the chin? Back out just a little more of the hair. He's got that Duran Duran hair. I call that the Englishman, and he's got a nose. He's got an eye. He's got lips. Zoom in on the lips. Zoom in on the lips. Yeah, down below. Go down to the lower lip. Do you see that long line? Zoom in on that. That long line.
Now, Stig, I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I need to pass a message to Ransom here. Ransom, this is from Ryan, our producer here. If you can switch to video between the slides, because we won't be able to make any shorts out of the PowerPoints. You need to flip between slides and face. That's message relayed to you. So anyway, that's it. Yeah. So Stig, we're trying to get extra content out of this for shorts, but you need to go between the video and the slides. Okay. So Ransom, let's take
the long line.
Follow that.
Put your mouse over to the right. There's a long line. Yeah.
Hey, don't tell me where to put my mouth, dude.
It's on the put your mouth on it. On the right. It's that long line. If you zoom in, you see the perpendicular lines. To the right, a little more to the right. There you go. That thing. Zoom in on that. Go up to the top by the mountain and tell me what created this. Now, you've got perpendicular lines. Rivers don't, that's a river, right? Or some of it's a river. But when you go down, you see how the perpendicular lines
Yeah, to the
are
southwest
cut
there.
into the bedrock. And you say, oh, hey, that's natural, that's natural. But wait, back out just a little and then
You guys are
start to go
killing me.
southeast, back out more because you're covering up the good lines right there, right there. If you want to zoom back in, look right where your mouse is. Zoom there.
Okay.
Yeah, zoom right there and tell me that somebody didn't terraform that land. Now you say,
Well,
oh, no, it's natural. Wait, back out, back out. I want to
okay.
show you more that'll prove that it's not
And what
natural.
I would like to let Ransom respond to that because you're just saying, tell me how that's not terraform. So
Sure.
I would have the same exact
Wait, but
question.
look at one more
Want an
thing.
answer from that?
Look
Okay,
at
so
one
that's
more thing.
a
Go down
future.
below the lips on the face and just a little farther below, just a little. No, don't back out too much because I can't see. Right about there, zoom back in. Not, yeah, no, down below where you had your mouse a second ago. And right about there, zoom in. A little step farther south at the bottom of the screen. Zoom, yeah, forget that and go to the right. And right, okay, that's another thing right there. But no, back out and go to the right and down, down, down. That right there. Zoom in, right there. Yeah, zoom in and tell me that that's natural. I'm sorry, guys. That is something that's been terraformed by people, and nobody talks about this. This is Chad in the Tibesti Mountains, and I'm sorry, that is not natural right there. I think that really proves, if you look at that closely, that it's the same type of terraforming on the bedrock. That whole area has been changed. And if you go into the mountains, you're seeing straight lines parallel. I show a slide later. You can go back to the slideshow. This is Chad, and it's in Africa. There's stuff in Mali. There's stuff in Niger. The upside down. Dave, you took out the circular dike slides, and I left them out. But those are, to me, constructed mountains. And in Mali, the straight lines. You all think I'm crazy, I can see. But when you see this and nobody talks about it, sometimes I think that like people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson are in on it. I know, I respect them both very well. And Randall Carlson, I don't know where he got his information, said people have been quarrying from the structure of the Richat for over 1 million years. And it's like, well, who are they? Hunter-gatherers? Why are the lines straight? And there's even straighter stuff. That was kind of rugged, but it still shows like some megalithic transforming for, was it water we were seeing? I think it was for agriculture and water. But the whole bedrock was terraformed there. There's stuff in Libya showing crazy, what's called concretions, and you're saying, oh, those are natural. Well, why are they all in the same place? And just like the arches in the, why are all the arches in the same place and not any? I'm not saying they're not anywhere else, but such big arches in Utah. Sorry, yeah, Utah, right by Moab. It's all over the world, Argentina, and I mean, I'm not like in control, so it's like I have all these things in my head, and yes, I have a little ADHD, so I kind of lose my point and get
Yeah,
excited.
can I draw back in the point? It was a Ransom. I was looking. Give us the stories of like million-year-old culture, because obviously the size of the human back that, they just talk about giants in the past, giants in the past. Like we are the smallest in the full lineage of humans to this point. If you believe that we're not the only ones right here created as such, right here at this size, and it's been like that forever. You go back into the past. So Ransom, what are you thinking about 1 million year old? Like what kind of, they had us popping around like a Lucy who's 2 feet or 3 feet tall, bouncing around like a kangaroo in Africa somewhere, and that's it, But I mean, 1 million years past, what does our history bring us to in terms of like known myths, known legends, known lore of the time of 1 million years prior in Africa? And we ain't talking Lucy with one tooth. We're talking something different here.
Well, we only got a minute, so I got a whole rebuttal about all of the features there in Africa. And I'm not a geologist; it's just me looking at it. Lucy and all that stuff has already been debunked. They didn't have the same kind of hip bone that bipedal hominids had, so it's very unlikely any of those million-year-old. And besides, we're now finding those same bodies in Asia and Europe. So the idea that we came out of Africa, or that's the only place that we came out of, is essentially debunked, especially with genetics. But as far as hominids go, humans. The largest human that we know of was Cro-Magnon. They were about 6 to 7 feet tall. That's officially. Now, there might have been a whole, there's all the legends of the giant redheads in the Americas. We'll get back to that after the commercial break, I think. It's 57.
Yeah, I didn't hear any music coming in yet to let us know that we were
time, so
rolling on the break. But
we'll get
everybody out there, thank you for staying with us during this time here. Talk about Richat Structure, ancient history. Stig's going to give us a call from the middle of the Richat Structure as we zoom through. And also, everybody out there, if you have any comments, put them. If you're following us on YouTube tonight or following us on Rumble, throw the comments in there because Ryan's monitoring the chat. So when we get some interesting comments, that's what I want to do for the second hour is come in and answer some of these comments that are coming through. Like we want to answer some of your questions for you tonight. So we'll be right back after 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And when you hear AC/DC coming back on, we're back on live. So enjoy the break. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
Things you can count on in a major disaster. Having your water supply cut off is one of them. With the Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank, you'll have months of drinking water in your home. Everyone else will stand in line waiting to get just a few bottles. It's one of the easiest, most affordable ways to store emergency water, and it takes up hardly any space. The Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank includes 1 BPA-free liner, comes with a siphon pump for extracting water, provides easy-to-follow instructions, fits just about any bathtub, large or small, fills quickly in 30 minutes or less, holds up to 65 gallons of water, and keeps water fresh for up to 16 weeks, holds about 2 months of water for one person. A person can generally survive without water for about 3 days. However, the exact amount of time depends on many factors, including age, activity level, and overall health. Don't gamble with your life and well-being. Being prepared is easier than ever with Civilization Cycle and Alexa Pure.
never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. Instafire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.
And we're back. I think you're on mute. Oh. Got an issue.
And
there we are.
There were so many things that he said that just make so much sense. And the cheese here, apparently it's healthy. If you eat it, the American cheese, it's not that healthy. How do you feel?
I feel pretty good. Can you hear me?
I can. Are we live?
Cool. Yeah, we're live. We're there.
Just
we're
checking.
cheesing it up.
And also the meat. I mean, like the Dr. Gundry's, I was 245 pounds. That's just why I want to get an affiliate link for him too, because I really feel that let's not call it his diet, but his philosophy, I've been following it. I lost 30 pounds in the last year, and I don't exercise more.
Sweet.
So, but some of the stuff he talks about with the cheese here in Europe, the pasta and the other flour here in Europe, the milk here in Europe, that's all digestible, but in the States, it's a whole different story. And that's one of the things I think is messing up the diets in the United States. I'm talking about Dr. Gundry. Dave, how are you doing? Oh, we can't hear you. Turn on your mic. Dave's mic's off. Dave, unmute. What? Your mic.
Well, he's having technical difficulties.
Okay.
There he is.
I've known Dave for a while. We met in Taiwan. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that. I was trying to add you to the call, and I saw only one guy with your name, and it said Taipei. So I was like, and then I realized
that was like the wrong.
Brian
that was
couldn't hear
another
me.
Account sorry. Say that again.
No, I was just saying he couldn't hear me, so I was asking nobody when I was trying to add you to the call.
Yeah, he was doing his thing, and I was doing my thing, and I couldn't get enough of Dave, man. It was such an incredible thing to meet him, and everybody, I didn't realize where he'd be here now, and I think that he's gone so far, and it's very proud of this guy. And it's nice to meet you, like I said, for the first time. I have only seen you guys on the videos, but I've done a few interviews with Dave, but you were not around or something was up. And so I was always talk to Ransom. So it's nice to meet you in person or talk to you in person. And This is not really in person, but you know what I mean?
It's as much we could do for the space age.
I'm in freaking Cadiz right now. This Cadiz was in Plato's dialogue. He talked about it being across from the allotment of Atlantis.
Right.
The small islands, Plato said there were islands in the outer sea. So there's a contrast there. That's why I always get mad when people go straight through the I know that you said that, but straight through the Pillars of Hercules and then straight out to the Azores. Look, before the cataclysm that killed Atlantis, I think that there was a global civilization. And I think that we can say pre-Atlantis was all around the world. You can't deny what you find in Peru. And I think it all adds up to ancient mining, though. I've heard that Lake Titicaca was a strip mine that got full. And I know it's a real stretch, but think about the Mediterranean Sea Basin as a strip mine that got full when the Pillars of Hercules were created by Hercules, right? When the Strait of Gibraltar was cut through by Hercules, whenever that happened. I went to Morocco. I'm going tomorrow to Morocco. And I've been to the Cave of Hercules, and there's so much myth here. It's really wonderful, this whole area, Cadiz. I was in Madrid, and if you like the city and you don't mind that life, but Cadiz, you're surrounded. And there's a star fort here. Here. I just went there. And it's not a full star fort. Somebody destroyed half of it, but 2 points still remain. And when you look at that they don't show it in their maps, but they're trying to cover it up, in my opinion. Who's they?
It's
I
the
don't-
Anunnaki, man. They got to
Well,
cover their tracks.
So the Anunnaki thing,
No,
I
I'm
think
just kidding.
it's supported by what I've seen in South Africa a lot. But I also don't want to believe that I was genetically altered by ET and created. I don't want to believe that. I really don't. But there's some evidence there down there in South Africa like that. I think South Africa is older than what's going on up in Sahara Desert.
Right.
It's like really old.
Well, I'm kind of two-brained here. Now,
I know you got to take look. I totally understand
so
about
like
being.
I was gonna talk to you guys about this when we got back. This spot that we were talking about here in Africa. This
Which
I don't
one?
know, crisscross line. Here, let me put that so you could see it. Wrong one. There we
And
go.
besides the Kalahari canals, there's other stuff like the Kalahari. Okay, that's right there.
So,
I mean,
this, well, let me
zoom in
give
and
you
take
a
a close look.
let me give you like just my thoughts on this whole idea. So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about on this stuff right here. Let me find it back again. It's kind of the top one here. This stuff. So my trip is that I know that you get layers in the earth, and then you have various things like floods, earthquake, and different stuff, and they crack into these rectangular pieces. Even the mud in the desert does it, and it's like a scale thing. So these are giant, right? So I'm
Okay,
not
but let's be
discounting.
honest about
I'm
the
not
mud in the
discounting
desert.
people working them afterwards, right?
So the mud in
But
the desert's a little different from the jointing that you see in
well, I
Utah.
know.
The mud in
Hold
the
on.
desert separates.
Hold on, let me get to my point here, because we're now seeing this kind of stuff on Mars, the same kind of thing. You get these layers, and they crack in these symmetrical things. So, like right here, you have this same concept on a bigger scale.
Zoom in. Zoom
And
in.
and oh, hold on, let me get to my point here. So you get over here, you see it on a very smaller scale. See, they're all cracked into individual pieces. And then on a larger scale, you have a whole plate, and it does this same thing. But when you were talking about it probably not being from water, kind of when you look right here, the evidence of the water draining out is right
That's
there.
water.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
I
well, what
agree.
I'm saying is the water's going to go through the path of least resistance. So whether or not somebody created it, whether the ground cracked in that layer, whatever the reason, the water's going to go straight down the channel and deposit at the lowest elevation. And you see this breaking up in symmetrical pieces everywhere, all over the earth. And now we're seeing it on Mars. The rover's driving around, if you believe it's actually on
I've
Mars.
seen a few things on Mars.
Right?
I've
But
been
you see
looking
this.
the face on Mars since I was in the 70s. I was like 8 years old. Look at those straight lines.
Right.
Usually you don't get cuts like that from a river. You get
Well, this
curves.
is my point. This is my point. If it cracks symmetrically on this top layer, the water will necessarily go down the straight line. And when you zoom in, it's not, super straight when you get down in there. But from above, it looks really straight. It is straight. But what I'm saying is if the crack in the earth is whatever shape it is, that's the direction the water will follow, and it'll increase the size of the features.
In
And
the
you see that-
slideshow, I took some of those and I put
let me-
yellow lines on them to show how they're all in the same direction. That whole mountainside, actually, if you continue to look at over there, you'll see the same thing going over and over. I do understand the concept of jointing and the explanation. I think when you have two sets of parallel lines, they create rectangles, but I can show you where there's three sets of parallel lines. How does the rock have a DNA that'll send out straight lines in three different directions?
Well, it depends on what material it is. Like all the way
Further
down
in
to
my
the
slideshow, the stuff that's you know what? I think David took that out.
Well-
I asked David to edit it because I do have too many slides.
Well,
Well, I
no,
like this Roman road here, the Bimini Road. Ransom, you mentioned Bimini Road. Sorry, technically, I could not join your call. I had to actually stop Skype, and then it had to reload and like re-download on my computer before I could jump back in on the call. But that looks like you mentioned Bimini Road earlier.
right.
Ransom. So any similarity to that, and also what you mentioned also in that one formation, Bimini Road kind?
Well, that's another example of possible, a natural formation. But when I say that, that doesn't discount somebody worked it. We find that everywhere in every level. Like, so you mentioned South America a minute ago. And it's funny, a couple of shows ago, we were talking about the metallurgy that was probably going on. And I said the wrong name in Peru. It was Tiwanaku. I kept saying I kept saying Cusco, but I meant Tiwanaku right next to Pumapunku. In Pumapunku, you find evidence of metallurgy. Like they were working gold, silver, something else, possibly in the lake there. And something happened that the lake went all over.
What's going on there?
It sounded like a cork.
I
Right?
hope that's not me. It's not definitely not me. My wine's finished. I have this much left right here, so I'm not messing with no cork. But
Must have been David.
go on.
He's breaking it in. No, I was just saying, you have all these places like Tiwanaku and Teotihuacan and some of the other Peruvian places that have the cardinal directions about, I think it's 3 degrees off. So it either there's two options. Either it's extremely old, pre-17,000 years, or the magnetic field was off at whenever they were setting the lines, because they found evidence in China near the pyramids that the people that were building those pyramids were using magnets to align with true north. So the problem with that is like now you have the poles moving around, not the physical poles, but the geomagnetic poles. So if they were using any kind of technology like magnetic lines, they would have been off, and they would have built it. That might be a way to, for one option to give it a time period. And then Tiwanaku definitely looks like they found Pumapunku, and whoever lived at Pumapunku knew about metals, because we find stuff like those, what are they called? The keystone cuts that you find all over the world on megalithic blocks, which insinuates they had metal to pour in it. So this is a whole nother level of technology. Well, I'm going to say pre-flood. I know that mainstream doesn't like that, but when you look at Cusco and some of these other pre-Incan sites, and they said themselves they didn't build that. They came along and they started, stacking rocks on it and putting roofs on stuff. But the foundation of it was already there. The big stones, the megalithic cuts, and you find that everywhere. Even in Japan, the imperial palace is built on some kind of structure that looks like it was the same architects as Cusco.
And check out a channel called Mind Earth. Mind Earth, it's like only 10 videos total, and he hasn't come back for season 2, and he did a great thing. And I believe that all that stuff in Peru was, after watching his stuff, it was part of a big mining project, or several projects maybe. Pardon me. I gotta mute it to do that.
Hey,
but
Stig, could I jump in for a second, or Ransom also? Now imagine if you come across one of these natural formations and you were there, and at that time the sun rose off of one of those exactly in the center, and then it set exactly in the center in different times of the year, and you were attuned to that. You would take that natural formation and turn it into a sacred site itself, just because the alignments the way it was. And I believe a lot of that, capturing of natural formations was also done too, but then they would be expounded upon, built upon, and then shall we say fine-tuned from that point of inhabitation around it, and turned into different sacred sites, and things would have been cleared out, things would have been built upon. So I mean, is that too far-fetched if we're finding things in the past, like you're talking about megalithic blocks, that could have been pushed upon as well, or built around and on top of? Would not a natural orientation of some sort of what you're finding, walls, dikes, or what do you like to term it as, is fracturing or mining operation or terraforming, whatever it is, whatever it was, would that not make sense to that somebody in the ancient past had found that and aligned at that perfect time, and it just they would have. How many of those could there possibility been around our planet? Hundreds, probably, if not just let's say a dozen,
Well,
at least.
just think about Jerusalem, Baalbek, and the quarry that's near there. Those stones aren't nearly as big as this stuff is showing in Africa. Like, it's small in comparison, but
I
in
agree.
comparison to even other megalithic stuff, it's giant. And we can see that they had some kind of technology we don't understand. It looks like either they could make layers of the rock liquid or dissolve in some way, because it looks like there's machine marks that just scooped out, underneath it. And you still have that giant one that's cracked. They just left it there. Just like those stones in Africa. When they mess up with stonework, they just toss it aside and start a new one. They were even doing that with those giant stones. And as far as I know, there's not one culture associated with those original giant stones. We only have the cultures that came and built on top of it. The Romans, the Phoenicians, all these people came after. So it's obviously some kind of pre-Diluvian construction method.
I'm here in Cadiz, Spain right now, and right down the street from this cathedral that was gonging until midnight, and it's after midnight here, there's a Teatro Romano. It's an amphitheater, and it's actually made out of some pretty basic stuff that I think could be carved with copper chisels, to be honest, because it's not that hard. But it's like they give it the credit to the Romans everywhere you go. And I have to thank Mike Parker, if he's watching right now. He's probably not, because he's in England. He turned me on to that concept that they always credit the Romans. Are you really going to say that Petra was done by the Romans, or the one thing that's there that's more modern day? What was that? I was thinking the Romans.
No, it was the Hittites that were given credit for that trade route and the construction of the city.
What about the amphitheater?
You see melted rock through there too, like a plasma discharge that would have melted part of their city.
Because I'm hearing that
I've been to Petra. I went to Petra in the early 90s, like 1993, way before you were roped off from going to anything. You'd climb all around me. We went everywhere. I spent a couple weeks there. We went down all these, like, I was into the rock climbing at that time. We went on all these little tiny channels and things, like squirreling up and spidering through stuff. And damn, there was so much forever, as far as you could possibly walk there. That was like a super megalopolis at that time.
Did you go to the
And that was credited with the Hittites, but also they were the ones who had the clay vessels that had saved magic mushrooms in honey that was still good to this day. And I don't know who would have tested that, but
Yeah, and they
just throwing it out there.
So the Romans, by the way, that used to be Mecca, right?
Oh, that was pre-Roman. The Hittites were way pre-Roman.
Yeah.
Well, around here, all I hear is it's either the Romans or the Greeks. The Romans or the Greeks. That's what I hear. But then you say that was the Hittites, so it's not just the Romans or the Greeks. But what about, the fact that some mosques point to Petra? Was it Mecca or not? The original Mecca. I heard it was.
I'm pretty sure that those Petra things are pre-Roman and pre-Islamic, so I doubt it was anything to do with Mecca.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you had to go back. It was Assyrian. That was like an Assyrian like off ramp as well. If you're looking at those trade routes, who controlled through there? If you trace it back to classical, we're coming back to the Sumerians, and then as they branched out, and we start to look and past Iraq, and then coming out into Jordan area, and obviously they're going to be going to the sea. They're going to be going off to the Mediterranean. If it was indeed at that level at that time, or was it captured and it hadn't broken through yet, and we get some flood myths. But that Dead Sea as well. I mean, that would have been a major salt source. I mean, you go down where you're talking about, Stig, down in there, and the weight of salt was worth the weight of gold was worth the weight of salt. So you're telling me they got the Dead Sea, they got captured salt everywhere, and they're not going to be mining that and like taking advantage of it? They would have been beelining to the sea as well. So that whole route from what you consider like landlocked interior Mesopotamia all the way out to where the salt route would have been right along the coast there. And hell, the Ghana Kingdom and Aksum Kingdom, they were trading all through there when the megaliths were still full all through Africa. So you might give it to the Sumerians, and we get, say, okay, things were more lush at that time. But at the same time the Sumerians were around, African megaliths at, like I said, mid-Holocene era, 6,000 years prior, were at their maximum capacity. So everything you talk about with canals would have been fully transportable. That would have been a maximum full, it doesn't have to do anything with sea level at that point. If you're in a captured system that's above sea level that captured that mega lakes that, and I told you, Stig, once before, like all of our Great Lakes combined would have only been the mega lake that was just south of Ethiopia in the Sudan area. That is one African mega lake that is as equally as large as all of our Great Lakes combined. Was just one. And you had 7 more of those Great Lakes sit through Africa. And, the square kilometers of all the surface area of those lakes was as large as the lower 48 states of America. Like all of our entire country in the lower 48 would be underwater. That's how large those mega lakes were. Yeah. Those were all connected by canals, estuaries, trade routes, all the way through. So you cannot tell me you cannot just like dismiss all of this historical fact that Samaria was connected to. And I'm wondering, I'm looking at that saying, you know what, maybe the reason that salt was so valuable through that time is because it was submerged. Like right now we come to salt mines in some of these areas and now it's salt mines. But what if it was under 50 feet or 100 feet of water? You weren't getting to it.
Aligned with the ancient equator right there.
Yeah, right. So maybe some of these things are, you gotta.
I went there.
Put water into the equation, and the mega lakes would have been full during these times. That's what a lot of people are missing in this whole. Okay, it's dry as can be. It's a bone dry desert now, but what if it was mega lake full? You got to look at the African mega lakes maps and see where they overlaid with these archaeological ruins, these sacred spots, and these sea lines and the old ancient coastlines, and see that where that would have lined up.
Hey, those previous lines were supposed to have been made by erosion, wind, and water. I'm sorry, I passed that, but the Piri Reis map shows the ancient Tamanrasset Paleo River, which I now call the Atlantis River because it comes from the Atlantis Mountains. I'm sorry, the Atlas Mountains. And what you see on the Piri Reis map is the perfect African coast, including Cape Blanco, including Cape Verde, but right between they show a river. This is 1500s, right? And that river goes up into mountains, and then there's a circle, and then there's another circle. If you notice one of my slides, there's a second circle that's aligned to the ancient equator that connects Giza to the Eastern Island. Now, we're talking about changes. Later, I show other mounds and their alignment, and they're also consistent, but at the same time, they're way different from that alignment of the ancient equator that Giza and Easter Island make. So I do believe that there's a series of projects. But if
wait, now, Stig, you just entered a whole new realm there of like geophysical pole shift on an ancient equator, which was really like offset how many degrees? Is that the ecliptic degree exact mark that you were talking about there? Or now I'm getting into, wait a minute, are we talking geophysical or are we talking magnetic?
I don't know about that, but they could have been aligned to just stars. So maybe they created an alignment with stars. It's what I've seen in the ones in Grand Canyon, the mound that's in the Grand Canyon that I've shown, and also Utah. There's 2 mounds, Lone Star Mountain north and south. I don't know if you know those. And then the ones in the Richat that arrow was just pointing at, they're all the same angle, which is kind of northeast. It's like 45 degrees on the compass. Maybe we could just say northeast. And then the ancient equator, that's a little different. And then the 2 circles that I found, if you connect the centers, it's exactly equal. Now that's 2 different topics, but I think I should point it out. I'd like to point out what's in Mali in the final moments of our broadcast. Maybe Ransom, take a look at that.
Well, we still have half an hour, Stig. Roll with it. Yeah, I'm interested in Mali to see, Mali, but that comes back with the trade routes that would have been at total full max water capacity of the African mega lakes.
What slide number am I looking for?
I'd have to take this.
No, they were doing some LiDAR scans through, and there's an enormous amount of like canals through that area. Even in present day, they're just like marshy, barely like a lot snaky, right? Area. Foot deep of water, half foot deep, a few inches deep of water. You wouldn't want to go walking through there. Tons of snakes and stuff. I'm not a snaky fan in like wet areas. But if that would have been deeper, you would definitely be able to run boats and stuff through there. You could have run boats for 1,000 miles across there.
And then the next one up. That's what I was talking about over there in Chad. And if you go back down, I really think that you don't get consistent parallel lines like that when you're, they're very similar lines. We have three different directions. Now, I'm not saying that that's jointing. I don't believe in jointing at all, but that's, I think, canals that were created. And why are they so zigzag before they meet that main one? Like the perpendicular lines that are way out there, why don't they attach? Why are this a 45-degree angle connecting those canals that we were just looking at? And then down below, that's Utah. I forgot to write. I put the picture twice. No, right below the yellow. There's that's right by Arches.
It seems
The
like a
white.
LiDAR sort of. Go up one more slide right there. This is the
Yeah,
small
that's
one.
that's Utah, and I don't think jointing can be that straight. I don't believe that rock has such a DNA that it's going to crack that straight. I live near Joshua Tree, California, and I've seen what nature does to rocks. Down below it, that's the Grand Canyon, the one that's right below there. Yeah, that one. And if you look, that's not a good one. I have a better one. That one
Well,
still shows straight lines.
this
And
is kind of
yeah,
what this is
jointing.
kind of what I was talking about before. This is the
Yeah,
same
the
thing
plateau on the
you
top's not touched. You're right. The
well,
plateau on the top.
what I'm saying is when you have a layer that cracks, it cracks symmetrically. You've seen crystals grow, right? They would seem impossible.
Sure.
I mean, like if you had never seen a crystal before, you would come across it and go, well, there's right angles, there's rectangles, it's all perfect. Somebody made this, but that's the structure that builds up from scale, and that's kind of what I was talking about. You're looking at scale. You could look at a flat bed of mud when it dries and cracks. You also see the same thing when there's an earthquake. And you know what's a good parallel to these ideas is the Karnak stones, right in France. At one time, they were straight lines. And this is a definite, for sure, well, maybe for sure, man creation, right? And it's showing the Pythagorean, idea of the triangle and all of that. There's mathematics embedded in it. However, over time, and not that much time, the lines are now crooked because there's been buckling in the top layer. So not all the lines are straight anymore, but they were at one time. Now, let's go on woo-woo land. In order to make blocks like this on purpose, you see, if you wanted to do it on purpose, you'd have to have a lifespan that lasts hundreds of thousands of years. Now, we've heard that before, right? That there were once these people that lived on Earth that lived hundreds of thousands of years. Because literally, you could go to the side of a more, less packed thing that's not rock like this and pee off the side. And in 100,000 years, there's going to be a whole little valley there where the water now drains down that. And then stuff like this is symmetrical. Most of these hard rocks, especially the ones that the ancients used to build stuff like andesite and all of that, it has a lot of crystal in it. So the pattern within the rock kind of determines how it will crack naturally when it falls apart. This looks like somebody built it, like somebody was out there on purpose, but you can see right in the picture, that's just gravity and water and wind
Well,
at
where are the
work.
missing pieces there?
They're right there in the valley. What are you talking
Are
about?
they? I don't
You
know.
can see
I
them.
think they're gone.
There's a giant boulder down there,
I see
square.
a couple of them. I'm not saying they're all gone, but I do think that it's like something's been removed. The
Well,
Richat structure as well. Where did all that material inside the Richat structure go?
you can see it all over North Africa.
The Richat structure?
No, the debris that's coming off of it. It will go over to
Um,
Google Earth.
I heard it all went to Brazil, actually. Oh,
See,
wait, there's one of them. You did have one slide in there.
well,
Um,
I'm just saying, you could see
no,
that
no,
the
no, go ahead, go
entire
ahead. I'm
North
sorry, I'm talking.
African part of the continent had massive flooding on it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You can see the
Is there no
scouring.
doubt, really? Yeah. Oh, it's obvious, but is it
Well, look,
obvious? I
you
mean,
can just follow the line of it. Where does it go? It
okay,
Yeah, I'm
comes
going to
right
let's.
say
out the
yeah
ocean.
too. I mean, sea level. Maybe there was a buckling of the planet, but whatever, that seawater rushed in. Something swept over there for
Well,
sure.
think about this for a second. You know, everybody
That's
talks
where he
about
and I
these.
disagree totally. I'm like, dude, you can see the scar marks. It's so easy where that water came for like on a pole shift or
That's
some
where I
sort
am
of
right now.
literally geomagnetic shifting of the planet. The Chinese talk about this where the Earth rotates in a different direction now. The sun used to set in the east and rise in the west. Like there are so many stories from India to China, Native American Indians, you know, First Peoples. Everybody talks about the same event. As much as people talk about the flood event, there's the exact same stories about the reversing of the planet itself event, but nobody wants, that's a hidden one nobody wants to talk about. You
I
can't
don't
tell
even
me
want
like
to talk
30
about it.
cultures in our world say, hey, the sun used to rise in the west and set in the east, and then suddenly we just like forgot about that one, but we always talk about the waters rolling over the planet.
Well,
You know,
I did
that's
want
an
to make
easy
one
one.
point
What
here
are they trying to hide from us?
with this straight of. Let me if I get this. So we know of one example of one of these big bodies overflowing. So if you can imagine 400 years ago, you would have to go, or not 400 years ago, I'm sorry. I meant 400 feet deep here in this crack. The bottom would have been much smaller, right? So when the ocean started spilling over this would have had a different level of water all in here. And there's a giant straight line right there. But what I mean is this Mediterranean Sea wouldn't have had the equal level of water that the ocean did when it started raising. So eventually it was going to have to pour out in here until it filled up and made even. And we know that this whole area has been raised, and so is this. And it goes down and it comes back up within hundreds of years, not hundreds of thousands, because we have Roman cities that they built, they went underwater, they were abandoned, then they rose back up and they re-inhabited it and fixed it. But the other one is this Black Sea area. We know that right here, at one point, this stuff was all dry land mostly inside here. This whole area, you could see it. There was habitation of people all through this, and one day, this level equalized with that level, flooding the entire thing. So I imagine, about 12,900 years ago, you have this whole glacial sheet melt off. You would have massive tsunamis hitting this side and then washing back. And the same thing over here. This is massive. But then on top of that, we know that lots of vegetation, lakes, all of that stuff existed at different times and is now just completely barren. And then you can put in, all of these different triggers. You've had massive flooding from the Mediterranean. We know that even the Pyramid of Giza at one time must have been underwater. And you can see these giant, waves in directions of sand all the way down this Nile. Look.
How do those waves go in the curved direction? Like over there by Chad, you've got these two curves,
Elevation.
like that little circle.
Elevation. You know what? What was the name of that map?
Period
Dubai?
Reefs map. Hey, can I come back with a point there? If you go back to the Black Sea, there's an enormous amount of habitation that has been found 40 feet underwater. And like the classical name they give for that is the Chalcodeans. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or if it's Chaldeans or something at that time. Like the jewelry work on the beadwork that they had was so advanced that it doesn't seem to fit for the time period around 6,000 years ago. The classical time period is like 5,500 years. I've run through a bunch of museums through Europe, and they always find that they're showing the same thing. But what's interesting is right off the coast of Israel, they're finding the same exact underwater, habitations at 40 feet deep. So it seems to be there was some sort of stabilization point where they made a gigantic leap in terms of technology and jewelry making, metallurgy, engineering, whatever it was. And then that 40-foot level encapsulated an enormous amount around the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea of just it came up and everybody was underwater. I'm going to leave that there as a fact point for everybody to look at. And it seems Chaldean or Chaldean, or how I like to say that, jewelry and some different museums, like I say, across Europe. And it was ahead of its time by like 1,000 years is what it comes back to. And a lot of that's off Romania. And it's off limits it's off limits for recreational divers, but if you have permits and with the museum, you're allowed to dive on it. But you as a even if you're just free diving, as like me with a dude, I can get down to 40 feet. I'm not allowed to go down there. Like there's areas that are roped off limits where you're not allowed to dive or free dive on these underwater cities. And I'm wondering why. You know, if you got an underwater city, why can't I just go down there and look around? But they're all off limits.
There's supposed to be one here in Cadiz that has 600 kilometers of tunnels, and I was going to try to deep dive into that, but things didn't work out. But I do believe if you look at the Google Earth map right there, sorry, that map, and you look at the shorelines and you see the dark blue compared to the light blue, that light blue represents where the shorelines actually were before the cataclysm or the Great Flood or whatever you want to call it, before the sea levels rose. Those light, look above by Doggerland over by England. I think that's also up by England. You see that whole area is light blue because
that was all below, that was all above water there.
Yeah, I think the light blue is the answer. You're looking at Google Earth and you're seeing two different shoreline under the water, but it's light blue. And so Spain, but Africa didn't change too much, a little bit. But then you can see
those are pretty big areas. What was that map name a couple of shows ago?
Reese map.
No. Dubai, the map that showed the ice, where the ice was through the years.
Yeah, that was we had two interactive maps. One was of sea level rise during the previous ice age, and you could trace that back to 80,000 years ago. And then the other one was, maximum ice extent of the previous ice age.
It shows the Cordilleran ice sheet right there.
Yeah, well, it shows all of them. It even showed the the Wisconsin glaciation on the full Laurentide ice sheet as well over North America.
Right, but what about Africa there?
What had every ice sheet that was in both northern and southern hemisphere. But yeah, this one's a good one too, where you can see where the vegetation lines had changed. And I'm telling you that we are coming into a wet period, and that's why so much focus is on Africa and Ethiopia. And can I throw an economic fact out? It doesn't seem like it fits here, but Ethiopia had the highest growth rate of any country on the planet this last year. Why is that? Because the new Renaissance Dam was providing constant electricity down to northern Sudan, and that had the highest growth rate because they went from zero to constant electricity. And can you imagine coming from the Stone Age to constant electricity? Like, what would your GDP do? That's exactly what just happened. So if we're going to push it out and have more grow zones, more fabrication, more factories, more everything, and they put 6 more dams down that all the way down to the Blue Nile. That's where the convergence to the Blue-White Nile. You might call it like the Western Nile or whatever that was part of that Sudan Great Lake. The everything's coming back. The moisture's coming back to Africa. It is going to be the largest grow zone on our planet as we move forward. And look at the economy already. The fastest growing economy on the planet was in Ethiopia last year. Just because they had electricity, that's insane that we think in the modern day they just had electricity so they could have the fastest growing economy. Like, we take electricity for granted. And I'll tell you, the last few days have been really, really windy here. We've lost electricity for like the last 3 days, every single day. So I'm on running the generator. I am super lucky that I have a generator to even be able to turn on the Starlink to be able to communicate. Like, not having electricity is an enormous, if we didn't have electricity and I'm burning wood out there to stay warm and cooking, my food with wood in the evenings, our life slows down back to, subsistence level. You got to realize the great leap forward, literally great leap forward by them having constant hydroelectric power driven by huge precipitation increases coming over some of the driest areas on the planet in the largest hydroelectric project in Africa. In one of the driest places of Africa, like the insanity to even build such a thing, but now it's working. So I'm going to stop there, but I'm sorry to hog the time there, Stig. Go back to it.
It's okay. It's, so much of what you say is so true, and I don't cover a lot. I'm a Google Earther that suddenly discovered the Richat Structure. I did enough Google Earthing to find these weird things. I don't know what that is right there. What is that? Pytown. Yeah, that ridge 12 miles long, parallel with the next one, 12
Ransom, could
miles
you
long.
squeeze down on that? I want to see exactly that feature you're talking about, or Stig's talking about
I
too.
climbed up there. Go back to the topographical map before that one, and you'll see the two ridges. And it's not just ridges, there's switchbacks, they're controlling the water in a way. Up above that slide was the topographical Caltapa right there. And those
Yeah,
lines,
Caltopos is one of the
that's
best
just
ones
like
if you're going to look
shiprock.
for like, yeah.
But it looks like it was laid right on that plateau. So when we're talking about the volcanic dike theory, because I have tried to study the mainstream, I always like to understand what mainstream says about these features. They just say, "Oh, it's a volcanic dike." Nobody's told me though. That's a obviously sage wall, and now we're thinking. I think it's geopolymer. When I got there, the backside was cleared out, and there's a nub on the top of one of those that's flattened out too. So it's like there was a rock on top of it. How did a nub flatten out? I know that I don't have the picture of it unless it's the next one, but I don't think so. And then this wall, that was Wandering Wolf. He's showing that. It looks so much like bricks. Yeah, there's always the argument it could be natural. Everything I have to say is that natural. But this, what is it, the Killian wall? I can't read that right now, but that wall, it's thinner than the Sage wall. However, and was it geopolymer laid or was it natural? If it's natural, why are there those horizontal lines? Because I feel like it was some type of a layered project. And but there was one on the other side of that Sage Wall. Wandering Wolf went there first, and he's going to be at Cosmic Summit. I'm going to be there too on the panel with Wandering Wolf and Nikki Anna Jones. They both went to Göbekli Tepe with Jimmy just a couple weeks ago after he got the trees removed. I know that sounds crazy if you don't know what I'm talking about, but this type of stuff's going on crazy. And now, wow, so many things have been going on. I just got to do what I think is right, and following up with the Giants Quarry is where I'm headed.
Hey, can I throw an idea with the quarries there, Stig?
Sure.
And Ransom, I'd like you to rebut on this if you think it's out of. So you just talked about a geopolymer where they could actually melt rock, like the ancients that had some advanced technology that could melt
Wait a
rock,
minute, slow down.
reform it,
Not
sculpt it.
melt. No.
Would you not
Cement.
also at the same time when you had it melted do some harmonics in it to remove the minerals that you wanted to out of pure substrate that would pull out in like literally a glob of the mineral that you wanted? So if you were going to melt the rock and turn it into a substrate, like we know we can do that with vibration and frequency, and then harmonically you can pull certain elements out, and that's the newest mining techniques that are coming out right now today, where they're using frequency. They call it frequency mining, where they blast the rock, it turns in almost like a liquefaction, but at the same time, and there's different frequencies that can pull different minerals out, and they actually get globs of it that come to the surface of the substrate you're talking about. But this is, again, if we're talking about something further back that's way more advanced than this is, would they not try to mine the rock first before they formed it?
Well,
I mean, we got limestone now. I mean, what if there was gold and tungsten and molybdenum and all these different minerals in that? Would you not try to pull those out in globs and then just use that like extra substrate, like you say, is a crystalline structure to make your rock and then put it back on? But we pulled all the minerals out of it first.
I think there's examples of that.
As a mining operation in the of times of old. I'm just asking, I'm throwing it out there because I don't know, it just popped into my head when you were saying those things.
I think that they were doing that, what I showed earlier with the Grand Canyon, all those straight lines. I think that they were scraping that stuff into the Colorado River and doing placer mining. Over there, where in Mali, at the Telebit city or whatever you want to call it, that to me looks like some type of overburden dumping or tailings. Call me crazy because I don't think I'm gonna ever even believe it myself sometime. But I've seen so much stuff in the Sahara Desert, and it doesn't, to me, look natural. Like the tailings all over. I call them snail trails everywhere. Those look like they were doing mining projects. What's up over there by the Richat, by the Tamanrasset River? You can see canals that are by the Tamanrasset River, and all around them are these lines. But I think the biggest example is in Telebit, Mali. I don't know if you can search that. If you put it into Google Earth and just put in Telebit, Telabit, Mali, and that's right next to the Richat Structure. And if you can look in those lines going east and west, and then when you hit the photos on Google Earth, you find those piles. They're not like Joshua Tree where they're melted, or I don't say melted because I think that erosion had something to do with Joshua Tree. But suddenly the lines are just straight piles for 10 miles each, and there's like 100 of them all in a row. I think that's more or less ancient mining. People are dumping. Who are they? Giants. But this is big projects. So when I see this stuff, it's hard for me to go back and say, oh, it's natural, because I've the ridges that go across. Dave, you removed a bunch of what I call the smoking guns. The one amphitheater of something's missing. It could have been natural. The amphitheater is formed, but then you got a straight line across it, maybe trying to fill something. And it doesn't look like they even did that. But you see these straight lines going everywhere. You see these dumps everywhere, big dumps, not just like our dumps. We have 25-foot wide dumps. When we see mines, we see the dumps all over them. They're little dimples. They look like pimples. But then you go to Libya, to Planetary Valley, and you see the same type of looking thing going on, but they're actually 250 feet wide. So they're 10 times larger. So I'm not saying who did it. I'm not going to say this was this or this was that, but out of the choices, who do we have? E.T., giants, ancient humans, and I'd love to have more time to convince you, but I think it says here 12 minutes left, so I don't have a lot of chance to change minds without the pictures. Take a look at Mali. If you can't find the telebit, I can show you how to get there. It'll be a little tougher.
I'll type it in there. But
Me?
let me hear what
What
you
do I
guys
type?
think about this. Okay. So
Type where?
Cusco,
Chat.
Peru is, I think, the best evidence for technology. And I can picture in my head exactly how they did it, because the quarry is right down the valley on the other side. So they had to have brought rock from one valley down thousands of feet and then back up thousands of feet and then put it in there in these weird shapes. So if you had a machine that could laser cut, not laser cut, some kind of cut, because you see these little weird patterns, crisscrossing patterns where they took the rock out. It seems like they had a machine that would take exactly how much material they needed in the machine and then put some kind of frequency in it to turn it to dust. And then when it was in dust, they would superheat it and squeeze it out into place, which would make it a perfect fit with no mortar on the last couple stones that was there. And it's almost like the little nubs on there were the connection to the machine when the liquid rock was poured into place and then broken off, kind of like whenever you squeeze toothpaste out of a tube of toothpaste, you get that little pointed thing at the end. So obviously they would have came back after that and then broke those points off of the nubs. But it looks like there's a lot of evidence that somebody had some kind of excavation machine that could take just the right amount of stone, liquefy it in some way, put it into place, and have it cool in a weird shape. It's three-dimensional. So it's not just what you see on the outside where you see this, multi sided stone in there. It's actually three-dimensional and fits into the wall like a three-dimensional puzzle piece, which insinuates also that they had some kind of three-dimensional software to even picture what they're doing. I know that's far-fetched out there, and I'm not saying it's ancient man or aliens or whatever. I'm just saying the evidence there looks like they had a machine. And if they could pull it off the mountain and pulverize it and liquefy it, then obviously they wouldn't have a problem moving those multi-ton stones into place.
I'm convinced that they were processing a lot of material out then. That link I just gave you shows you what I think is the tailings or maybe overburden dumping. Because when you mentioned that the plateau was not touched, but right below it was, I see that a lot. And I think that maybe you also can notice that it's usually next to a body of water or a river. And I think they were pulling that stuff down into the river and processing it that way. You've got Michael Tellinger's circles. You've got circles everywhere. In New Mexico, you got plenty of those weird, what are they called? Kivas? I think these were all processing centers. And they're different projects, but they're all some type of processing center. I'm going to find you one more link, and then I'm not going to talk much longer. But that one I just gave you kind of shows. Where's that one? I gave you the coordinates in the chat and a link to the Google Earth. And I have one last one. I'll show you because it was taken out of the thing. Yeah, there you go. Don't tell me those straight lines are just some natural occurrence. Those things, there's too many of them. They cross over each other. That's long lines of some type of dumping, in my opinion. I know I sound a little bit
No, but Stig,
confident.
those are all lines of independent loose rock. Those are not bedrock that's in that formation. I remember you
If you
showed
look
me
at
an
the
image
photo,
of that. It was
yeah,
just super long lines of just rock that was piled on top of rock, on top of like loose rock, boulders on top of boulders, like broken rock. It wasn't smooth boulders. It was like broken rock on top of broken rock, just for all these crazy amounts of distance there. And I was like, huh.
one after the other. Tell me a natural
Oh, wait
thing.
a second. He's got something on geologic glacials.
Uh-oh.
But did the glaciers go all the way down into North Africa and out into Western Africa? That would be a question to ask too,
Well,
because we looked at the
which
maximum
point in
glaciation
history?
extent. And it came down to sort of, into France and that further down into Switzerland. But glaciers didn't go down into Africa unless there was some sort of geophysical shift. And we had one ice age prior that was over Africa with a geophysical shift, and then it shifted back. That would make perfect sense too. I mean, if we're talking about geophysical pole shift or something is moving off 20, 30 degrees, and perhaps it's multiple shifts on that. So if you went back 3 or 4 ice ages ago, would Africa be in a sort of polar region? And then Antarctica would have been in a tropical region. And then it had all the scouring marks, and then it moved back over in the next couple 100,000 years on the shifts.
Oh no, it's
I
very
can't answer
possible.
all
Just
those.
asking for the audience, man. Just asking for the
Can't answer,
audience.
I
Just
can't answer
asking.
all those questions. I actually closed my Google Earth. That last link is more geo. Those are actually north of the Richat Structure up in Algeria called Erg. Let's get all Erg for a second and look at that last one. Then I'll shut my mouth. I'll let you guys close the show out without me because it's almost 5 in the morning, I guess, huh? And I was supposed to be out of here at 8. I gotta go to the airport. Not the airport. What am I talking about? I gotta go to the bus stop, and we're going down and we're gonna cross to Tarifa. Um, those what I called the yeah, right there. Those, if you back out a little bit, you'll see that, and maybe angle it so you can look at it in 3D. You can see how those lines actually cross over from plateau to plateau. So a lot of stuff happened. Get a little closer down there. Yeah, look at those lines on that plateau and see how they connect to the other plateaus. The lines on the plateau are older than the water events that separate those plateaus. If you get to, and they're not that far apart, they're just a couple miles. Maybe you can
What
even argue that those are modern day, but what cut those? How did they get cut? And yeah, it does seem to link to stuff that looks natural. That's far away from
Well,
the
that
stuff.
looks like wave pattern erosion. That looks like wave pattern deposition off of large. I was around the ocean for a while in my life, and the waves, they leave those parallel ridges just like that. But that's got to be massive, like continental scale
Zoom in and look
flooding
at those.
to leave that kind of. And
Zoom in.
where else is that? Carlson talks about that too,
How
where
do you
there's just
have 3 sets
depositions
of
of the
parallel
of like
lines?
the and he was like, they're 150 feet tall. You got to realize that would have been like a 4,000-foot wave or something that would have left that kind of watermark. That's exactly right there what you just zoomed in on, Ransom. That was sand deposition from the waves coming at the opposite direction there that would have left that. Damn, I wonder how tall those things are. Because then you got 2 parallel points, one in the northeast U.S. and then one there. There's some flooding that's going on there. Stig, you and I disagree until the day we die, man. But that I
Oh,
am
I didn't say
absolutely
there's no
sure
flooding.
massive
I'm saying
floodwaters rolled over. Right there's your sand deposition of wave pattern. Now, I
well,
don't know about that,
just
but I mean,
looking
that
at
sand, a
this,
little bit south of there, right at that riverbed, that was massive sand
if you look
deposition
at
there.
this, all of
You can
these
see it so
crisscrossing
cleanly right there.
lines.
It's in the middle. It's in that middle feature.
Well, what I'm trying to say is
To the east.
this layer right here is the same layer as this, is the same layer as this. This is one layer on the earth. Everywhere you're seeing those cracked lines in this area are the same layer elevation wise. So like you move over here, you find another spot in that same layering. You have to find one that's eroded away, and you see
I agree.
I found
I
one over
agree.
here.
I agree it's the
crisscross
same
patterns.
layer. I just don't agree how it was created. Because they're too perfect, and there's too much perfect. It's 3 sets. Those are triangles. Those aren't
Well,
rectangles.
the closer you
anymore.
get, the less perfect it gets.
The more perfect I
Oh, it's a
the
heart.
closer you
Oh,
get, the
happy
more straight
Valentine's Day,
those
everybody.
lines are. Oh, I have one. Okay, are we out?
We're out.
Okay.
David Stig
I have to get back.
Hansen.com. Support him for
Thank you,
the
Ransom. Thank you,
GoFundMe
Dave.
to go do more research for us on the North Shore the megalith shoreline coming up to worship site.
Thank you for listening to Revolution
We support it.
Radio.
Bye for now.